Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17. 2 verses, 43 words in the King James Version. And inside those 43 words is a weapon that has been misidentified for almost 2,000 years. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. No man might buy or sell. Everyone thinks this is about a microchip, a barcode, a digital implant, a future technology that will one day scan your forehead at the grocery store. For decades, the prophecy industry has built an entire empire around this idea. Books, movies, conferences, YouTube channels predicting the day when a global dictator will force the world to accept a technological mark. And while they were pointing at the future, they missed the present. Because right now, in March 2026, there is a people group in America that is being systematically blocked from buying and selling. Not by a chip, not by a scanner, by executive orders, by agency closures, by defunded community investments, by eliminated scholarships, by a coordinated dismantling of every mechanism that allowed Black Americans to participate in the economy on equal footing. The DEI ban is not a microchip. It is a policy, and it is executing the exact same function that Revelation 13 describes, restricting economic participation for those who do not conform to the beast system's demands. I know that is a strong statement, so let me prove it. Line by line, policy by policy, scripture by scripture. And by the time we are done, you will see Revelation 13 not as science fiction about a chip, but as a blueprint that has been running against God's people for 3,500 years, and you will know exactly what to do about it. Before we can understand Revelation 13, we need to go back to Daniel, because John did not invent the beast. Daniel defined it 400 years earlier. And what Daniel says about the beast will dismantle everything you think you know. Daniel chapter 7. The prophet is in Babylonian exile, a captive Israelite serving in the court of a foreign emperor. And in a night vision, God shows him the future of human governance, not as abstract ideas, but as animals, beasts rising from the sea. The first beast, a lion with eagle's wings. Scholars identify this as Babylon, the empire of Nebuchadnezzar, known for its winged lion iconography, its golden glory, and its eventual decline when Nebuchadnezzar lost his mind and ate grass like an ox. The second beast, a bear raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth. This is Persia, the Medo-Persian Empire that conquered Babylon. Raised on one side because the Persian element dominated the Median element. 3 ribs representing the 3 major conquests: Babylon, Lydia, Egypt. The third beast, a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. This is Greece, specifically Alexander the Great, whose military conquests moved with leopard-like speed across the known world. 4 heads because after Alexander's death, his empire split into 4 kingdoms under his 4 generals: the Ptolemaic, Seleucid, Antigonid, and Attalid dynasties. The fourth beast, terrible, dreadful, strong exceedingly. Iron teeth. 10 horns. This is Rome, the empire that crushed everything before it, that lasted longer than any previous beast, and whose systems of governance, law, taxation, and military organization became the template for every Western empire that followed. Now here is the critical insight that the Western prophecy industry consistently ignores. Every beast is a kingdom, not a person. Daniel 7:23 makes this explicit. The fourth beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth. Kingdom, system, machine, institution. Not a charismatic individual, not a single dictator. a system of organized power that operates across generations, that transcends any individual ruler, and that grinds populations through its machinery of governance. Babylon was a system. Nebuchadnezzar died, and the system continued under Belshazzar. Persia was a system. Cyrus gave way to Darius, gave way to Xerxes, but the machine kept grinding. Greece was a system. Alexander died at 32, but the Hellenistic machine ran for 3 more centuries. Rome was a system. Emperors were assassinated, went mad, committed suicide. But the Senate, the legions, the tax collectors, and the provincial governors kept functioning because the beast is not a personality. It is a machine, and this is where the Western prophecy industry fails catastrophically. They take the concept of the beast, which Daniel explicitly defines as a kingdom, a system, a machine, and they reduce it to a single future person, the Antichrist. One man, one face, one microchip. And in doing so, they blind their audiences to every beast system that is operating right now. Because if you are looking for one man, you will miss the machine. Now, when John writes Revelation 13, he is not starting from scratch. He is building directly on Daniel's architecture. And his beast is not a new creature. It is the accumulation of every beast that came before. Revelation 13:2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Leopard, Greece. Bear, Persia. Lion, Babylon. John's beast has the body of all the previous empires. It is not a replacement for the old beasts. It is their evolution. Every imperial system that has ever existed contributes something to this final beast. Babylon's cultural seduction, Persia's bureaucratic efficiency, Greece's intellectual control, Rome's military dominance. The beast of Revelation 13 is the greatest hits album of imperial oppression. And the beast receives power from the dragon, not from human ingenuity, not from democratic mandate, not from market forces, from the dragon, the spiritual, systemic, supernatural force that has been empowering imperial machines since Babylon. The beast is not a natural political development. It is a spiritually empowered system. Now let us get to the weapon. Because every beast has a weapon, and the weapon of the Revelation 13 beast is not what you have been told. Revelation 13:16-17. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark. The weapon is economic restriction. Look at what the beast does not do. The beast does not immediately kill everyone who resists. It does not unleash plagues or natural disasters against dissenters. The beast's primary enforcement mechanism is the marketplace. Those who conform, who accept the mark, who align with the system, get access to the economy. Those who refuse are locked out. You can exist, but you cannot participate. You can breathe, but you cannot build. You can survive, but you cannot thrive. You can live in the land, but you cannot buy or sell in it. And the mark is about conformity. The mark is not primarily a technology. It is a declaration of allegiance. Those who accept the system's values, who comply with its demands, who bow to its image, receive the mark and gain economic access. Those who refuse, because their allegiance is to a different king, are excluded. Now, let me ask you a very direct question. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like something happening right now in America? Does that sound like a system that says, if you believe in equity, if you refuse to accept that structural racism does not exist, if you will not conform to our definition of merit, Your position is eliminated. Your funding is cut. Your agency is closed. Because that is exactly what the DEI ban is doing. And it is executing the exact function that Revelation 13 describes. Let me map it. Policy by policy. Dollar by dollar. Agency by agency. Because the beast does not execute in abstractions. It executes in specifics. And every specific lines up. In early 2026, the executive orders came fast. Federal DEI offices, the departments tasked with ensuring equitable hiring, fair evaluation, and inclusive workplace policy across the United States government, the largest employer in the nation, were shuttered, not reformed, not restructured, eliminated. The staff were given 30 days to vacate. The programs were defunded. The training materials were classified as divisive ideological content and removed from government servers. The framing was deliberate. Merit-based employment. Eliminating divisive concepts. Restoring individual achievement over group identity. These phrases sound neutral. They sound fair. They sound like common sense. But listen to what they actually demand. To keep your federal job, you must agree, explicitly or implicitly, that structural racism does not meaningfully affect employment outcomes. You must accept the premise that the playing field is already level. You must conform to an ideology that says equity programs are unnecessary, that diversity goals are discriminatory, and that any effort to address systemic disparities is itself a form of division. If you refuse, if you believe, based on evidence and lived experience, that structural barriers exist and require structural solutions, your office is eliminated. Your position is defunded. Your expertise is deemed divisive. This is Revelation 13. The system creates an image, a vision of merit that ignores history and demands that everyone bow to it. Those who bow keep their jobs. Those who refuse are economically excluded. Not imprisoned, not executed, excluded from the marketplace, from buying and selling. Now let me show you what the buying and selling restriction looks like when you zoom out from individual jobs to institutional infrastructure. CDFI, Community Development Financial Institutions. If you have never heard of CDFIs, it is because they operate in the communities that mainstream banks refuse to serve. CDFIs are federally certified financial institutions, credit unions, community loan funds, venture capital funds, that channel capital into underserved communities. They fund Black-owned businesses in neighborhoods where Chase and Wells Fargo will not open a branch. They provide small business loans to entrepreneurs whose credit scores reflect generational redlining, not personal irresponsibility. They invest in affordable housing in communities where private developers build luxury condos. $300 million in CDFI funding was eliminated in 2026, not reduced, not reallocated to a different program, eliminated. Think about what that means through the lens of Revelation 13. No man might buy or sell. When the lending institution that serves your community is defunded, your ability to buy, to purchase a home, to start a business, to invest in property is directly restricted. And your ability to sell, to access markets, to secure contracts, to grow your enterprise is equally blocked. Not by a chip in your hand, by a line item removed from a budget. The Minority Business Development Agency, MBDA, created in 1969 by executive order. For 55 years, MBDA served as the bridge between minority business owners and the federal procurement system, a system worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually. MBDA helped minority entrepreneurs secure contracts, access capital markets, develop business plans, and compete for government work that was historically reserved for firms owned by the racial majority. In 2026, MBDA was permanently closed. 55 years of institutional knowledge. 55 years of relationships between minority entrepreneurs and federal contracting officers. 55 years of data on minority business performance, growth trajectories, and capital needs. Erased. No man might buy or sell. When the agency whose sole purpose was to help you sell your products and services to the federal government is shuttered, your selling capacity is restricted by policy, not by your competence, not by your product's quality, not by market demand, by the deliberate elimination of the bridge that connected you to the marketplace. And then Pell Grants, the financial lifeline for students from low-income families wanting to attend college. More than 70% of Black college students depend on Pell Grants to afford their education. These grants do not need to be repaid. They are the federal government's explicit investment in upward mobility for those who cannot afford the full cost of higher education. Cuts targeting Pell Grant eligibility and award amounts in 2026 hit HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, with disproportionate force. HBCUs educate a massive percentage of Black professionals, 70% of Black dentists, 50% of Black engineers, 50% of Black lawyers, 80% of Black judges. When you cut Pell Grants, you do not just reduce a line item, you throttle the entire pipeline of Black professional development. No man might buy or sell. Education is the entry ticket to the professional economy. When you restrict access to education for the demographic that most depends on financial aid, you restrict their future ability to participate in the professional marketplace. They cannot buy a seat in the classroom that leads to the career that allows them to buy a home and build a legacy. The National Urban League published a report in early 2026 with a devastating headline: Black America is already in a recession. While the general economy reported growth, while stock markets set records and tech company valuations soared, Black unemployment was climbing, Black business closures were accelerating, and Black household debt was expanding. Two economies in one country, one growing, one shrinking, separated by policy. Now stack all of this together and look at it through Revelation 13. DEI office is eliminated. Conformity demand. Agree with the system's definition of merit or lose your position. CDFI funding cut. Financial exclusion. The institutions that funded your community's economic participation are defunded. MBDA closed. Marketplace restriction. The bridge between your business and the federal marketplace is demolished. Pell Grants restricted. Education gatekeeping. The pathway to professional participation is narrowed. Jobs cut. Business funding eliminated. Community investment defunded. Education access restricted. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark. This is not a future technology. This is current policy, executing the exact function that John described in his apocalyptic vision. A coordinated siege, not on a single person, but on every mechanism through which a specific people participates in the economy. And the beast does not announce itself. It does not arrive with horns and fire. It arrives with executive orders and budget amendments and press conferences about restoring merit. It arrives dressed in the language of fairness while executing the mechanics of exclusion. That is how the beast has always operated. And that is why we need to go back 3,500 years to see the playbook. Because this is not the first time God's people have faced this exact weapon. The beast's playbook is not new, it is ancient. And nowhere is it more clearly documented than in the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Now, there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. That single verse contains the template for every beast system that has ever targeted God's people. A new administration arises, and the first thing it does is erase the previous regime's relationship with the covenant people. It knew not Joseph, deliberately forgot the contributions, the labor, the loyalty, the service that the Israelites had provided to Egypt for generations. Does that sound familiar? A new administration that deliberately forgets the contributions of a particular people group. That rewrites the narrative to say, "We do not owe you anything. We do not know you. Your service is unrecognized. Your labor is unremembered. Your presence is a threat, not a contribution." Pharaoh did not start with the genocidal decree to kill male babies. That came later. He started with economics. Exodus 1:11. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Taskmasters. Economic exploitation, forced labor for the accumulation of imperial wealth. The Israelites built Egypt's treasure cities, the storage hubs for grain, gold, and military supplies, and received no ownership stake. They were embedded in the empire's economy, essential to its function, but excluded from its profits. Then Pharaoh escalated. Exodus chapter 5, verses 6 through 9. This passage is so relevant to 2026 that it reads like a congressional budget amendment. And Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, Ye shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And the tale of the bricks, which they did make heretofore, ye shall lay upon them. Ye shall not diminish aught thereof. Read that carefully. Pharaoh did three things simultaneously. First, he removed the resources they needed to do their work. No more straw. Second, he maintained the same quota. Ye shall not diminish aught thereof. Third, he added additional labor. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. More work, fewer resources, same expectations. Now map that onto 2026. DEI, offices eliminated. The resources for equitable workplace practice removed. Federal workforce still expected to reflect diversity goals. The quota unchanged in practice. Black professionals now expected to navigate bias without the support structures. Additional burden placed on individuals. More work. Fewer resources. Same expectations. Pharaoh's formula, executed with a modern vocabulary. And then, verse 9, the most chilling instruction. Let their more work be laid upon the men, that they may labor therein, and let them not regard vain words. Vain words. Pharaoh classified the Israelites' complaints, their appeals for fairness, their requests for equity, as vain words. In 2026, the DEI ban classified equity language as divisive concepts. Same tactic, same dismissal, same empire, different accent. Now fast forward to Babylon. Daniel chapter 3. The golden image on the plain of Dura. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, built a statue of gold, 90 feet high, 9 feet wide, and commanded every official, governor, captain, judge, treasurer, and counselor to gather for its dedication. And when the music played, everyone was required to fall down and worship the golden image. This was not religious devotion in the conventional sense. The image of gold was a symbol of imperial conformity. Bowing to it declared, I submit to Babylon's authority. I accept Babylon's ideology. I conform to Babylon's system. And the penalty for non-compliance was immediate and severe, thrown into a burning fiery furnace. 3 Hebrew boys refused, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were the original DEI non-compliant employees. They held positions in Babylonian government. They had been educated, trained, and appointed as administrators over the province of Babylon. They were inside the system, working within it, contributing to it. But when the system demanded ideological conformity that contradicted their covenant identity, they refused. Daniel 3:16-18, their response to the king. O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. But if not, 3 of the most powerful words in the Bible. Even if God doesn't rescue us, even if the furnace kills us, we will not bow. Our non-conformity is not conditional on divine rescue. Our identity is not negotiable. The system can burn us, but it cannot bend us. Now, Daniel chapter 6. The same pattern, different weapon. The administrators of Persia, jealous of Daniel's influence, convinced King Darius to sign a decree. For 30 days, anyone who prayed to any god or man except the king's would be thrown into the lion's den. Daniel's response. Daniel 6:10. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day, and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. As he did aforetime. Daniel did not escalate. He did not protest. He did not organize a resistance movement. He simply continued. He kept his windows open. He prayed toward Jerusalem 3 times a day, exactly as he always had. His resistance was consistency. His defiance was continuity. And then the American beast, Jim Crow. 1865 to 1964. 100 years of economic restriction dressed in the language of law and order. Black codes, passed in 1865 and 1866, immediately after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, created laws that criminalized black unemployment. If a freed person did not have a labor contract, if they were between jobs, if they were trying to start their own business, if they were simply taking time to figure out their next step, they were arrested for vagrancy. And the penalty? Forced labor. No man might buy or sell. You could not sell your own labor on your own terms. The economy required your participation, but only under conditions that the beast system defined. Convict leasing. Imprisoned black men leased to private corporations, U.S. steel, railroad companies, mining operations, as cheap labor. The beast did not merely exclude black people from the economy. It extracted economic value from their bodies through criminalization. You became profitable precisely because the system had criminalized you. Redlining. The Homeowners Loan Corporation, a federal agency, literally drew red lines on maps around black neighborhoods. Banks were instructed not to issue mortgages in those areas. The result? 3 generations of black families unable to build wealth through homeownership, the single most proven mechanism for middle-class wealth accumulation in America. No man might buy a house in a redlined neighborhood, no matter your income, your savings, or your credit. Sharecropping. Formerly enslaved people worked land they would never own, buying seeds and equipment on credit from the landowner, selling crops back to the landowner at prices the landowner set, accumulating debt that could never be repaid. A permanent economic treadmill. You could participate in the economy, but you could never accumulate. You could buy and sell, but always at terms that ensured your poverty. 3,500 years. Pharaoh, Babylon, Jim Crow. 2026. Same playbook, same weapon, same target. The beast is not one person. It is a pattern, and the pattern is economic exclusion enforced through conformity demands. Now let me show you the beast that nobody sees, Because in 2026, the beast does not need a physical mark. It has something better. It has a number, a 3-digit number. And that number determines whether you can buy or sell in modern America more effectively than any chip, any tattoo, or any barcode ever could. Your credit score. The FICO credit scoring system was developed in the 1950s, perfected in the 1960s, and became the standard economic gatekeeper by the 1980s. Today, your credit score, a number between 300 and 850, determines whether you can purchase a home, lease a car, rent an apartment, get a job, start a business, qualify for insurance, or even get a cell phone plan. It follows you everywhere. It is attached to your Social Security number. It is checked by landlords, employers, insurance companies, and financial institutions. It is, for all practical purposes, the mark that determines whether you can buy or sell. And here is the part that nobody teaches in church. The credit scoring system was built during Jim Crow. The initial data sets, the lending patterns, repayment histories, and financial behaviors that the algorithms were trained on were generated during an era when Black Americans were systematically excluded from the very financial instruments that build good credit. If you lived in a redlined neighborhood, banks would not give you a mortgage. No mortgage means no credit history for real estate. If you were denied a business loan because of your race, your credit file shows no commercial lending history. If you were trapped in sharecropping debt, your credit profile reflects permanent financial distress, not because you were irresponsible, but because the system was rigged. The algorithm does not know you are Black. It does not need to. It knows your zip code. It knows your lending history. It knows which institutions you have relationships with. And all of those variables are downstream consequences of generations of racial economic exclusion. The algorithm is laundering discrimination, taking the outputs of a racist system and repackaging them as objective financial risk assessment. Black Americans have statistically lower credit scores than white Americans, not because of personal financial irresponsibility, because the data inputs, home ownership rates, access to credit, generational wealth, were shaped by centuries of deliberate exclusion. The credit score did not create inequality. It inherited inequality and gave it a scientific veneer. No man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark. You do not need a microchip when you have a 580 credit score in a system that requires 720 for favorable terms. And then there are the algorithms, the invisible beasts. In 2026, artificial intelligence systems make autonomous decisions about hiring, lending, insurance, and marketing that directly affect whether individuals can participate in the economy. AI-powered hiring tools screen resumes and filter candidates. Mortgage algorithms calculate interest rates and loan eligibility. Insurance algorithms set premiums based on neighborhood demographics. Advertising algorithms determine who sees job postings and investment opportunities. These algorithms have been documented by researchers at MIT, Stanford, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology to discriminate. AI hiring tools trained on historical hiring data replicate the biases in that data. Mortgage algorithms charge higher rates for zip codes with higher Black populations. Insurance algorithms price risk based on neighborhood characteristics that are proxies for race. Revelation 13:15 describes the image of the beast being given life, the ability to operate independently, to make decisions, to punish non-compliance. Modern algorithms have exactly this capability. They are digital images of the beast system, autonomous decision-makers that determine economic access without human oversight. The algorithm decided. The data model showed. The risk assessment indicated. The beast does not need a face, it needs a server. And here is the most devastating convergence of 2026. The DEI ban eliminated the people whose job was to audit these systems for bias: the equity officers, the diversity reviewers, the algorithmic fairness teams, the people who checked whether the AI was discriminating, whether the credit model was biased, whether the hiring tool was filtering out HBCUs. These were the watchmen on the wall, the audit function that stood between the beast's algorithms and unchecked discrimination. Gone. Defunded. Classified as divisive. The beast system did not just restrict access to the economy. It removed the people who were fighting for access. It did not just build walls around the marketplace. It fired the gate openers. It did not just discriminate. It eliminated the discrimination detectors. This is the genius of the beast, and it is the detail that Revelation 13 captures with terrifying precision. The beast does not merely control the economy. It creates a system where control appears neutral, natural, and inevitable. The algorithm is objective. The credit score is mathematical. The policy is merit-based. The beast hides its mechanics behind the language of fairness, just as it always has. From Pharaoh to Babylon to Jim Crow to the Federal Register of 2026. James chapter 5. 6 verses that read like a prosecutorial opening statement, delivered by a prophet who has had enough. Go to now, ye rich men. Weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. James is not mincing words. He is not offering a balanced, both sides pastoral reflection. He is pronouncing judgment on accumulated wealth that was built through exploitation. And the language is violent: corruption, moths, rust, flesh-eating fire. God's economic justice is not gentle. But verse 4 is where the courtroom doors blow open. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. The wages kept back by fraud, not by accident, not by market fluctuations, not by economic downturns or industry corrections, by fraud, deliberate, intentional, systematic theft of the economic value created by laborers. Now let me convert this verse into American history and watch how precisely it lands. 246 years of slave labor. From 1619 to 1865, enslaved Africans and their descendants built the economic foundation of what became the wealthiest nation in human history. They cleared land. They planted cotton, tobacco, rice, and sugar. They built houses, roads, and railroads. They cooked, cleaned, nursed, and served. And they were paid nothing. Economists have calculated the value of unpaid slave labor in various ways, but even conservative estimates place it in the trillions of dollars when adjusted for compounded economic growth. The cotton economy alone, built entirely on enslaved labor, was the primary driver of American wealth in the antebellum period. The 5 most valuable assets in the American economy before the Civil War were enslaved human beings. More valuable than all the railroads, more valuable than all the manufacturing. People, classified as property. Their labor extracted without compensation. The hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, creth. That wage, that unpaid, stolen, fraudulent wage, has a voice. And James says that voice has reached the ears of God, but it did not stop in 1865. The fraud continued, sharecropping. After emancipation, formerly enslaved people were offered freedom to work land they could never purchase, in exchange for a portion of the harvest. But the landowner set the crop prices. The landowner ran the general store where sharecroppers bought supplies on credit. The landowner kept the books. The system was designed so that at the end of every season, the sharecropper owed more than they earned. Permanent debt. Economic participation without economic accumulation. Freedom in name, bondage in practice. Convict leasing. Imprisoned black men, many arrested under vagrancy. Black codes that criminalized unemployment were leased to private corporations as laborers. U.S. Steel, railroads, coal mines, turpentine farms. The state collected the lease payment. The corporation got the labor. The prisoner got nothing. Slavery by another name, as Douglas Blackman documented in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book. Redlining. Federal agencies drew literal red lines around black neighborhoods, classifying them as hazardous for lending purposes. Banks refused mortgages. Insurance companies charged higher premiums. Businesses could not get loans to open or expand. 3 generations of black families, from the 1930s through the 1970s and beyond, were locked out of the primary wealth-building mechanism in American life, homeownership, the wage gap. Even after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, black workers consistently earned less than white workers for the same jobs. The Institute for Policy Studies reports that for every dollar a white family holds in wealth, a black family holds approximately 10 cents. The median white household has roughly 10 times the wealth of the median black household. This is not a gap, it is a canyon, carved by 4 centuries of stolen labor, fraudulent systems, and policy-enforced exclusion. The hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. The wages are crying, from the cotton fields of Mississippi, from the coal mines of Alabama, from the red-lined neighborhoods of Baltimore, from the shuttered CDFI offices of 2026. The wages have been crying for 400 years, and James says those cries are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Sabaoth. Most translations render this as Lord Almighty or Lord of Hosts, but the Hebrew and Greek word beneath it means Lord of Armies, not Lord of Patience, not Lord of Tolerance, not Lord of Wait and See, Lord of Armies, Commander of angelic military forces, the divine general. When the stolen wages reach the ears of the Lord of Armies, the response is not a committee hearing. It is not a reform proposal. It is military-grade divine intervention. Proverbs 22:22-23. Rob not the poor, because he is poor. Neither oppress the afflicted in the gate, for the Lord will plead their cause and spoil the soul of those that spoiled them. God will plead the cause of the oppressed and spoil, destroy, ruin, devastate those who spoiled them. Isaiah 10:1-3. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people. What will ye do in the day of visitation? Unrighteous decrees. Written grievousness. Isaiah is describing policy, written laws that harm the poor, and he says, woe. What will you do when God visits? When the Lord of Armies shows up to investigate the documents you signed? The beast restricts. The wages cry, God hears. And the Lord of Armies responds. That is the prophetic sequence. And if we are currently in the restrict and cry stages, which the evidence overwhelmingly confirms, then the response is coming. Because God's record on economic justice is not ambiguous. He dismantled Pharaoh's economy with 10 plagues. He toppled Babylon in a single night. He scattered Rome across 2,000 years of decline. The beast systems that steal wages have a 100% failure rate, because the Lord of Armies does not lose. So what do you do when the beast system is executing its pattern against you? When the policies are signed, the agencies are closed, the funding is cut, and the economic walls are rising? What is the biblical response? The answer is in Daniel, and it is not what you expect. Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day, and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. Study that verse carefully, because every detail is a strategy. When Daniel knew that the writing was signed, Daniel was not ignorant of the decree. He was not uninformed. He knew the policy had changed. He was fully aware that the empire had signed a document specifically designed to restrict his religious practice, his covenant identity, under penalty of death. Daniel was not naive. He went into his house. He did not go to the palace to protest. He did not organize a resistance rally. He did not file an appeal with the imperial court. He went home, to his own territory, to his own space, to the place where his authority was absolute, regardless of the empire's decrees. His windows being open, not closed, not curtained, not shuttered. Open. Daniel did not hide his covenant practice. He made it visible, deliberately. Anyone walking by could see. Any spy could report. And Daniel knew that. The open windows were an act of spiritual defiance, not loud, not violent, not confrontational, but absolutely visible, toward Jerusalem. Even in exile, even in Babylon, even under Persian imperial authority, Daniel oriented himself toward home, toward the city of God, toward the place of covenant promise. He did not let the empire redefine his compass. His direction was set by covenant, not by policy. 3 times a day. Not once, which might have been cautious. Not secretly, which might have been strategic. 3 times, more than necessary. As if to say, the decree demands I pray 0 times. I will pray 3 times. The system wants none of me. It gets more of me. As he did aforetime. This is the most powerful phrase. Daniel did not change his behavior because the policy environment changed. His response to the beast system was continuity. He kept doing exactly what he had always done. His resistance was consistency. His defiance was normalcy. He refused to let the empire alter his rhythm. Application. In 2026, the beast system says, equity is ideologically unacceptable. Daniel's response would be, keep building equity anyway. Keep funding black businesses. Keep supporting HBCUs. Keep mentoring. Keep investing. Keep the windows open 3 times a day, as you did aforetime. Now Daniel chapter 3, the furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow to the golden image, and Nebuchadnezzar, furious at their non-compliance, ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. The punishment was amplified because the non-conformity was public, because it was visible, because it challenged the system's authority in front of the system's officials. 7 times hotter. Let me tell you what 7 times hotter looks like in 2026. The DEI ban alone would be the furnace at normal temperature. Add the CDFI defunding, hotter. Add the MBDA closure, hotter. Add the Pell Grant cuts, hotter. Add the algorithmic discrimination running unchecked, hotter. Add the credit scoring system laundering generational exclusion, hotter. Add the cultural narrative that says talking about these things makes you the problem. 7 times. They were bound and thrown in. The soldiers who threw them in, the people who executed the empire's orders, were killed by the heat. The system's own enforcers were destroyed by the fury of its own machinery. That is not a minor detail. The The beast system does not just harm its targets, it consumes its own agents. But in the furnace, something happened that Nebuchadnezzar did not plan for. He looked into the flames and said, "Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." 4. Not 3. The 4th man appeared inside the fire. God did not prevent the furnace. He did not stop the decree. He did not overthrow Nebuchadnezzar before the fire was lit. God got into the fire with his people, and the fire that was supposed to destroy them destroyed only the ropes that bound them. When they came out, and they did come out, not a hair was singed, not the smell of smoke on their clothing. The fire that was designed to be their destruction became their liberation. It burned only what enslaved them. Application: the economic fire of 2026, the DEI cuts, the defunding, the closures, the algorithmic discrimination, is the furnace heated 7 times hotter. And God's response, based on his track record, is not to prevent the fire. It is to get into the fire with you. And the fire burns only the chains. And then the aftermath. This is what they never preach. The after. Daniel 3:28-29. Nebuchadnezzar. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel, and delivered his servants that trusted in him. Therefore I make a decree, that every people, nation, and language, which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, shall be cut in pieces. Daniel 25-27. Darius, I make a decree, that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Both times, in both cases, with both kings, the empire that tried to destroy God's people through conformity enforcement ended up issuing a decree acknowledging God's supremacy. The beast system does not get the last word. The survivors of the fire do, and the survivors were not merely spared, they were promoted. Daniel rose to higher authority under Darius than he held before the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted in the province of Babylon after the furnace. Non-conformity did not end their careers. It elevated them beyond what conformity ever could have achieved. What does Daniel's template look like in 2026? Let me be specific. Keep the windows open. Do not hide your commitment to equity, justice, and community building. Do not go quiet because the policy environment changed. The empire says equity is divisive. You say equity is biblical. Proverbs 31:9. Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Build in the fire. Move your deposits to black-owned banks today. Support black businesses deliberately and consistently. Buy from community enterprises. Fund HBCU endowments, not as charity, but as infrastructure investment. Refuse the image. Do not accept the premise that equity is unnecessary. Do not internalize the narrative that structural racism is a progressive invention. The golden statue was impressive. It was also an idol. Not everything that is government policy is divinely ordained. Expect the 4th man. When the economic pressure intensifies, and if the pattern holds, it will, look for God's presence in the pressure. He did not remove the furnace for Shadrach. He did not empty the den for Daniel. He joined them in the trial. History shows the 4th man shows up precisely where the fire is hottest. Daniel tells you the mindset. Now Nehemiah gives you the blueprint. Nehemiah chapter 4. The practical manual for building under siege. Because Daniel's non-conformity must be paired with Nehemiah's construction. You cannot just resist the beast. You must build while you resist. Nehemiah was a cupbearer to King Artaxerxes of Persia, a high-ranking position, comfortable, secure. But when he heard that Jerusalem's walls were still broken, generations after the exile, he wept, fasted, and prayed. And then he did something remarkable. He asked the empire for resources to rebuild what the empire had destroyed. He leveraged his position inside the system to fund construction outside the system. He took letters of passage, timber requisitions, and military escorts from the Persian king, and used them to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. That is the first lesson. Do not refuse the system's resources out of pride. If the system offers grants, contracts, capital, take it and build. Nehemiah did not say, "I refuse Persian timber because Persia destroyed the temple." He said, "Give me the timber. I have walls to build." But as soon as Nehemiah started building, the enemies showed up. Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, the local power brokers who benefited from Jerusalem's weakness, mocked, threatened, and conspired to stop the construction. They laughed first. Then they mobilized armies. Then they invited Nehemiah to talks that were actually assassination attempts. Nehemiah's response is one of the most practical passages in the entire Bible. Nehemiah 4:17. They which builded on the wall, and they that bear burdens, with those that laded, everyone with one of his hands wrought in the work, and with the other hand held a weapon. One hand builds. One hand fights. Simultaneously, not sequentially. Not, first we fight, then we build. Not, first we protest, then we plan. Simultaneously. The trowel and the sword at the same time. Let me translate Nehemiah 4 into a 2026 economic blueprint. The building hand, parallel economic infrastructure, black-owned banks. There are 19 black-owned banks and 29 black-owned credit unions in America. One United Bank, Liberty Bank, Industrial Federal Credit Union, Optus Bank. These institutions exist. They serve black communities. And moving your deposits from Chase or Wells Fargo to a black-owned bank is not a symbolic gesture. It is an economic act. Every dollar deposited increases their lending capacity. Every dollar lent creates a business, a home, a paycheck. The CDFI fund was cut by $300 million. But black-owned CDF still exist. They are underfunded, stressed, and understaffed. But they are operational. They need deposits more than donations. Move your checking account. Move your savings. Move your business accounts. This is the trowel. Cooperative economics. In 1900, W.E.B. Du Bois documented over 100 cooperative economic enterprises in black communities, buying clubs that pooled purchasing power, cooperative grocery stores, shared commercial spaces. These models do not require government permission or corporate partnership. They require community agreement. 5 families pooling resources to buy in bulk. 10 entrepreneurs sharing a commercial kitchen. 20 neighbors creating a community investment fund. The cooperative model is ancient. It is how the early church operated in Acts 2:44 to 45. All that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men, as every man had need. This is not socialism. This is covenant economics, and it predates every economic system invented by the beast. HBCU investment. Historically, black colleges and universities are not just educational institutions. They are infrastructure. They are the factories that produce the professionals who serve black communities. 70% of black dentists, 50% of black engineers, 50% of black lawyers, 80% of black judges. When you invest in an HBCU through tuition support, endowment giving, research partnerships, or corporate recruitment. You are investing in the pipeline that sustains the entire community. Pell Grants are being cut. The beast system is throttling the intake valve. The Nehemiah response: increase private investment to compensate. Every dollar from alumni endowments, corporate partnerships, and community giving offsets a dollar lost from federal cuts. Land ownership. This is the foundation of generational wealth in America and the single most devastated asset category in Black economic history. In 1910, Black Americans owned 16 million acres of farmland. By 2020, that number had collapsed to under 2 million acres, a loss of over 87%, driven by tax sales, partition laws, eminent domain abuse, and outright theft. Every acre of land purchased by a Black family in 2026 is a brick in Nehemiah's wall. Land does not get defunded by executive order. Land does not disappear when agencies close. Land is the one asset that the beast cannot delete from a spreadsheet. Buy land. Own land. Build on land. Digital economy. Tech entrepreneurship, e-commerce, remote consulting, digital content creation, online education platforms, economic infrastructure that does not depend on physical proximity to institutions that exclude you. The digital marketplace does not ask for your credit score when you post a product. It does not redline your neighborhood when you launch a website. The fighting hand, legal, political, spiritual warfare, legal defense, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, the Equal Justice Initiative. These organizations are fighting the DEI rollback in federal courts right now. Support them, not just emotionally, financially. A $50 monthly donation to the Legal Defense Fund funds the lawyers who may restore what the executive orders eliminated. Political engagement, school boards, city councils, state legislatures. The policies that restrict are written by people who won elections, run for office, register voters, show up at town halls. The beast operates through policy, and policy is written by elected officials. Spiritual warfare. Nehemiah 4:14. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your houses. Nehemiah prayed before he built. The spiritual fight precedes and sustains the economic fight. Prayer is not passive. It is the foundation on which the wall stands. And the wall stands. Nehemiah 6:15-16. So the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month Elul, in 52 days. And it came to pass, that when all our enemies heard thereof, and all the heathen that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of our God. 52 days, against mockery, against conspiracy, against assassination attempts, against exhaustion. The wall was finished, and the enemies, the Sanballats and Tobiahs of the world, were much cast down in their own eyes. They lost their confidence, because they perceived that the work was done with the help of God. When the economic infrastructure is rebuilt, not by government permission, but by covenant people building with trowel and sword, the world will know it was God. That is Nehemiah's promise, and it is yours. Let me bring it all together. Because tonight you heard something that no one in the Western prophecy industry has said to you. The beast of Revelation 13 is not a future technology. It is a present pattern. It is a system that a present pattern. It is a system that demands conformity and punishes dissent through economic exclusion. And that system did not start in some imagined future. It started with Pharaoh. It continued with Babylon. It evolved through Jim Crow. And it is executing right now, in 2026, through executive orders that dismantle every mechanism of Black economic participation. DEI offices eliminated. The conformity demand. Agree with the system's ideology or lose your position. CDFI funding cut, financial exclusion. The community lending infrastructure severed. MBDA closed. Marketplace restriction. The bridge between minority businesses and federal procurement demolished. Pell Grants restricted. Education gatekeeping. The pipeline to professional participation throttled. Credit scores. The digital mark. A 3-digit number built on Jim Crow data, determining who can buy and who can sell. Algorithms. The living image. Autonomous decision makers that discriminate without human fingerprints. And the DEI ban eliminated the watchmen who audited these systems for fairness. The beast removed its own accountability. The wall lost its sentries. James 5 says the stolen wages are crying out to the Lord of armies. 400 years of unpaid labor, sharecropping fraud, convict leasing, redlining, and now the DEI rollback. The wages have a voice, and God is listening, not as Lord of patience, as Lord of armies, as Sabaoth, as the divine commander whose track record against beast systems is undefeated. And Daniel shows us the response, not protest, not despair, non-conformity. Windows open, 3 times a day. As aforetime, refusing to bow, refusing to be silent, refusing to let the empire dictate the rhythm of your covenant life. And when the furnace comes, and the furnace always comes for those who refuse to bow, the 4th man shows up. In the fire, and the fire burns only the ropes. And Nehemiah gives us the blueprint. Build with one hand. Fight with the other. Black banks. Cooperatives. HBC us. Land. Digital enterprise. Legal defense. Political engagement. Spiritual warfare. The trowel and the sword. Simultaneously. If you are watching this tonight and you lost a job in 2026, if your funding was cut, if your program was shuttered, if your agency was closed, listen to me. You are not a victim of policy. You are a survivor of the furnace. And the fire that was designed to destroy you will burn only the ropes that bound you, just like Shadrach, just like Meshach, just like Abednego. The 4th man is in your fire, and he did not show up to watch you burn. He showed up so that when you walk out, and you will walk out, not a hair on your head will be singed. Daniel did not stop praying. Nehemiah did not stop building. You do not stop either. Keep the windows open. Keep the deposits in black banks. Keep investing in HBC us. Keep buying land. Keep mentoring the next generation. Keep building businesses. Keep the covenant. Type 4th man in the comments right now if you refuse to bow to the image. If the beast system demands your conformity and you answer with Shadrach's declaration, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Our God is able to deliver us. But even if he doesn't, we will not bow. Let me see how many furnace survivors are watching tonight. Let me see who stands with Daniel's open windows. Let me see who builds with Nehemiah's trowel. Share this video with someone who just lost a DEI-related job, someone whose program was defunded, someone who is wondering whether God sees what is happening. Share it and tell them. Revelation 13 described what happened to you, but Daniel 3 describes what happens next. The fire burns only the ropes. Subscribe to this channel and hit that bell, because in our next video, we are going inside the slave Bible. In 1807, the British published a Bible for enslaved people in the Caribbean, and they deleted 90% of the Old Testament and 50% of the New Testament. When you see which verses they removed, the liberation verses, the identity verses, the justice verses, the power verses, you will understand exactly what they were afraid of. and you will never read your Bible the same way again. Tell me where you are watching from tonight. Drop your city. Drop your country. Because the furnace is global. The beast system does not respect borders. But neither does the fourth man. Now let us close this the way it should be closed, with a prayer rooted not in comfort, but in resistance, not in resignation, but in refusal. A prayer from the furnace. Father God, we come before you tonight as people who refuse to bow to the image. The system demands our conformity. The executive order says our values are divisive. The policy says equity is an ideology. The budget says our community's financial lifeline is expendable. But we read your word, and your word says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Your word says, "The hire of the laborers kept back by fraud crieth, and the cries have entered the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth." Your word says, "I will plead the cause of the poor and spoil the soul of those that spoiled them." We refuse the mark, not a chip, a compliance. We refuse to agree that equity is unnecessary when the wealth gap proves otherwise. We refuse to accept that merit is colorblind when 4 centuries of evidence scream in color. We refuse to pretend that deleting an office deletes the problem the office was created to address. And we step into the fire with confidence, not confidence in our own strength, but confidence in the record. Pharaoh's economy was dismantled by 10 plagues. Babylon fell in a single night. Rome scattered across 2,000 years of decline. Every beast system that restricted God's people from buying and selling has been defeated. 100% failure rate, because the Lord of armies does not lose. Lord, let the fire of 2026 burn only our chains. Let the furnace heated 7 times hotter become the crucible that forges something the empire did not expect. A people who build while they burn. A people who invest while they bleed. A people who create while the system restricts. A people who come out of the fire without the smell of smoke. Promoted, elevated, strengthened, and impossible to ignore. We will build with one hand and fight with the other. We will deposit in black banks and litigate in federal courts. We will fund HBCUs and run for school boards. We will buy land and register voters. We will teach our children that the beast is a pattern, not a prediction, and that God has been defeating it for 3,500 years. In the name that is above every executive order, every algorithm, every credit score, every agency closure, and every beast system that has ever tried to restrict your people from buying and selling. In the name that turned the furnace into a testimony and the lion's den into a promotion. In the name of Jesus Christ, the Lamb who has already defeated the beast. Amen. The beast pattern is 3,500 years old. So is God's record of defeating it. 100%. Every time, without exception. You are standing in the fire, but you are not standing alone. The fourth man is in the furnace with you. And he did not come to watch. He came to walk you out.